Hey everyone, welcome to Studio Insights with the Belvista Studios team. We've got Kim and myself, Hannah, here. Victoria is away living her best life at the moment, but she'll be back in another future episode.
Back living her best life in a future episode.
Exactly.
Returning to her best life with us.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Before we get into the questions, I've just got a question to get you a little bit excited for everyone that's listening for what's coming. So I'm going to ask that question. Kim, if your question was a campaign, what would it be called?
Campaign. Like a marketing campaign or something.
Or a learning campaign, any sort of like project campaign. What would you call it? Just to give everybody some insight into what's coming.
The reality of coaching.
Oh, I love that. That's really cool. Well, mine is People's Choice.
Oh,
it's the People's Choice.
Damn. Okay. I feel like you're a Netflix documentary or something like that.
All right. So before we get into those questions that we've shared a little bit of insight on for everyone watching or listening, if you're watching this video, you are likely a learning designer or instructional designer, and we highly recommend that you check out our human-centered design cohort. It's for learning designers and instructional designers, anyone in the learning and development space or change management space. Check it out. It's epic. You get our playbook, you get our online course where there's role plays, Q&A interviews, and you get personal coaching, group coaching, and basically it's our ultimate experience to basically see how we do our projects and get the success that we get, and you can replicate it for your own projects. So check out the cohort. There's going to be a link in the description so you can go and check it out, and we would love to have you there if it feels right for you. Let's get into the questions. Kim, what's your question?
My question's for you, Hannah.
Really?
I believe last episode you were asking for coaching tips. And since then you have had two very different opportunities to kind of facilitate coach. So one is a one-on-one situation with someone, and then the other one was you were facilitating some user interviews with like a big attendance group. What, on reflection, what were the things that set you up for success if you were to build a checklist?
I would say consider things that may happen and have some sort of plan in your head. So like, don't expect that it's going to run exactly as you plan, because like I'm a big planner and I sort of think things are going to run the way I've set it up. But sometimes there's other things like outside of your control that can happen. For example, the session might run later than it was supposed to start. You might have less time than what you thought you did. And I guess it's not coming up with like exact things that you're going to do, but just going into the experience being flexible and open to the fact that it might not be run the way you think it's going to be run. Because that can avoid you like getting overwhelmed and stressed and like not getting what you need from the situation. I think another thing is like being really clear on what you need to get out of the situation. And if you have that front of mind when you go into it, if things happen that are unexpected, you can just keep going back to like your intent for it, for whether it's the coaching session or the workshop. And then you can like sort of adjust in your head, like, this is what I need to get. It might look different now because of other things that have played out. How can I still get that outcome somehow without like panicking, and making sure it's like an enjoyable experience for everyone and you get what you need from the situation? I think for me, and this might be different for everyone, but because it is something I don't do all the time, I like to, if there's parts that I know I have to or like need to say to the group, I will like read over it and get comfortable with that information before going into it, because that's like the one part that I can control. And if I can like not worry about that part, I have more mental capacity to deal with like the unexpected things that happen. So that was like really useful for me. Like I had basically everything, like I knew exactly what I needed to say in like the sort of structured parts. And that took off a lot of stress. What else? I think be open to the fact, and this is something that you shared with me, that even if you understand something really well, it doesn't mean everyone else will. Because you have like context other people don't and experience that other people don't. So think about how you might be able to explain an activity or a situation in like different ways. And I know there's like, it's like a process by AJ and Smart that I refreshed on. And it's, you talk about like what the activity is. So like what it's called, why you're doing the activity, and then how you're doing it. So what, why, how. And that process like helps sort of everyone understand, because some people like do need to know the why, others don't. But if you can like share the 3 key things that are important to people, it helps them to understand it better. And it was interesting in that AJ and Smart course, because they said you have to, like for 99% of people or whatever, or 90% of people to understand the activity, you have to say it 3 different ways or 3 times. And if you just say it one time, it's probably 30% of the group that will understand it. I don't know the exact figures, but it's something like that. So just giving people the opportunity to ask you questions. Like I know I said that a lot of times after each activity, like please just like call out, put your hand up. If you don't understand something, yell out. Like I made that really clear that it was okay for them to ask questions because they'd never done it before. So I think it's important to like give them that opportunity. Probably another thing is to like be confident in what your skills and experience are, and don't like, even if someone can't understand it or see it or doesn't agree, like don't sway too much from your own process. Like it's about like trying to help people to understand what you're doing rather than like completely changing it, I think. What else? I think focusing on the audience rather than yourself. So I think if you focus on the people that you're serving, you're less likely to get caught up in your own head and lose confidence and like have mind blanks and all that. If you can just like keep thinking about the other people and what you can do to like best serve them, you'll get a better outcome. So like an example is one of the workshops I ran, there ended up being like another component to it and another audience in a different format that I wasn't prepared for. So like I could have been like, how is this going to work? Like, what am I meant to do? But like the whole time I was just like, if I was them, like contributing to the session in that format, which I like didn't know that was going to happen. Like what would they need to be able to contribute? And just like having that as like a focus point on top of the other things that I was doing throughout the session.
Yeah.
What else? I think that's the main things I can think of.
Really cool. Thank you. I like the prepare as much where it's the easy stuff so that you can have the energy to deal with the unknown. And also just like 100%. What would I need if I was them? That's cool.
Thank you. And it helps. I feel like that helps as well to like, if you don't know what you're doing and your mind's only on like, how am I going to remember this, or what do I need to say next? You also lose the ability to like build rapport with the people that are there. Like I felt like, because I went there so prepared and knew what I needed to say and everything, it gave me the opportunity to like build rapport and connect with the people that were in the session beforehand. Like I wasn't like reading through notes being like, I can't talk to anyone. I don't know what I'm meant to say next. Yeah. Like I could have like those human moments with people and like connect with our client and stakeholders in like a calm way. So yeah, it was good for that as well, I think.
It's really cool. Well done.
Good question.
Thank you.
It was good to reflect on that, actually. So thank you for asking. It was really good.
That's all right. Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like I'm learning a lot about myself too, like what I'm currently proficient at and things that I want to get better at, or like certain parts of it I like and don't like, and do I not like it because I don't, because there's a knowledge gap, or is it just not my thing? Or like there's been like a lot of reflection around, because there was sort of like two different experiences as well that I did. Like they were both facilitation, but like very different in terms of like what I needed to do. And like, yeah, so it was interesting. Thanks. Cool. Good question. All right. My question. Did you get what you needed?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Sweet. My question was around, so recently we needed to organize some user insights. So we asked like lots of questions from users or learners, and they were different to like our user interview template. They were like slightly different.
Okay.
Based on the project we're working on.
Okay.
And you came up with like you were doing it live with Victoria and I, but you're coming up with a way to present the insights in the best possible way. So you had like problem, you incorporated like the ad card change model, you had like reach, like how many people said it, and also like recommendations for next steps or the design. I was just wondering, like, what was your process in your head for figuring that out? Because like we saw you do it, but we didn't really, like, I feel like I didn't see what was going on in your head when like it's like complex thinking that you were going through. Or if you have any insights, I guess when people have a lot of user insights and like, how the hell do I organize this so it's useful?
Okay, let me, because this is a new thing. So we didn't have a template and I was doing it live with you. Okay, so we had all this data, a lot of data in different formats and serving different purposes. And in my head, I was thinking, what do I know about our process and how it might apply here? So if I think about our process, always starts with what's the problem you're trying to solve? So I was just like, what's the problem I'm trying to solve right now? And the first thing is I need to communicate this data back to a client to do something with it. What is it they need to do with it? So in my head, I'm just asking these questions. So I was like, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve right now? Then what is the client needs to do something with it? And then in my head, I'm like, well, what do they need to do? And then I was like, well, they need to make decisions for XYZ based on the information or the data that we provide. Okay, cool. Then I'm moving towards success statement, right? Like, so that's how I was getting to my success statement of like this report and presenting the data back. Success at the end of presenting this insights report back to them looks like blah. Okay, cool. Now I know what I'm trying to do, or the output I'm trying to receive. How do I get there? And that's where the table came into. So I was like, okay, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? And then it's like, well, there's lots of problems. I was like, okay, cool. Well, but let's just start with that as the first column. So what are all the problems that exist? And then it was like, well, what do I need to do with those problems? It's like, do I need to solve them? Do I need to, so I just keep asking myself, like, with what I know right now, what do I need to do next? Or how does this help me towards success? So I just was honestly following our process, asking the questions in my head that helped me organize the data that we presented back into a way. So for there, it was like, okay, if these are all the problems, what do we do at problems? Well, the whole point of success of this is there's actions to be able to solve each of those problems. So it sounds like I need a recommended actions column. And then I was like, well, what might come up with the recommended actions column? It could be to do with anything. What might those be? Because I need to consider them. Is it cultural? Is it environment? Is it skill? Actually, there's some design consideration that's coming in here. So that's where we were able to go to like a sub level of recommended actions, basically. And then it was like, okay, well, if they're the recommended actions, and that's the problem we're trying to solve, putting myself into the shoes of the other people, where would they be to get them from problem to the action that we're going to recommend? And that's where we had the ADKAR, is like they're in awareness, they need desire, they need the knowledge to do this. So I was helping them to break down, where do I need learners to be if I'm in their state? Why should they care about this thing to achieve the outcome, considering the current state? And then from there, it was like, well, now I know that this might need to be training, or this is just a tweak. Like that's jumping to solution, but it was starting to give me like direction, I guess. And then the last thing is like, okay, you ended up with like, what was it, like 40 pages or something of insights. So that's 40 pages of a table. So there could have been like, over 100 insights or problems that we needed to solve, technically fitting on like if 3 problems per page. So that's a lot. And then I'm like, okay, well, knowing that we ran 8 activities that had multiple things, mini activities within that, I was like, well, how are we going to know where to start with anything or what's important? And that's where it was like, we need to be able to prioritize that. Because I was thinking back to success at the end is the client taking this and doing something with it. How would they know if they get 40 pages and 100 plus? Actually, there's probably like over 500 recommended actions like to do. How are they going to know where to start? And it's like, well, success for them is knowing where to start. So they need some sort of mechanism to prioritize. And that's what was like, okay, well, how do they prioritize low, medium, high? Yeah, and that's where it kind of came to. And then it was just like there's probably at this point, that's all I can prepare and know to be able to respond to. Let's try one and flesh it out, which we did together. Then we did another one it made sense in my head. I did it. And then I was like, I wonder if this is going to make sense in your head. You did it for me and we filled it out together. And it roughly worked. And then the last thing was like, there's probably unknowns, or there's probably things that are general or something. So we're just going to put them in a checklist at the end. And until we know what they are, we can't deal with them right now, but we can't let the data go into the abyss. So we need to collect the data. And then when we know who that data is, we can either just go, oh, it's just general information that needs to be considered at what point, or maybe we would have had to do something different with it, knowing whatever came into that. That was my thought process.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, it sounds like you were just closing the gap from where we needed to be for the next stage of the project. And also, like, I like how you said considering what questions, like that's like applying human-centered design to the client. Like what questions might they have? For example, where do I start? Or what does this mean?
Yeah.
And making sure that like it was covered in the way that we organize the data.
Yeah.
That was really good. Yeah, I also liked, because we did ADKAR, but I also liked how you brought up like the challenges where we have like environment, motivation, like those as well, I think could be really cool. Skills and what was the other one? Knowledge, yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, yeah.
It kind of happened. We didn't specify it in the recommended actions column, but if we look at the actions that are mentioned in there, they do fall under it. But I think that's just because we're actually like, it's a habit for us now to think that way holistically around solving the problem, but a prompt would have been useful, and we might have even come up with like way more solutions if we had been thinking to that level of detail.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really good. It makes a lot of sense as well. Like with the ADKAR, you can figure out, like by organizing it in that way, you can see when things need to be done as well. Like if there's like an awareness piece, like people need that first to know what to actually do, and then it moves into the next stage. So yeah, it's very effective. Good job.
Well, it's interesting because I think like going on from that, like you took on that task afterwards and we're working on it. and then you had picked up red flags. And then when I came back with like a sense check peer review, I said, you need to think about if the client picked this up, what would they do with it? And then it kind of changed your approach to how you did it. And your red flags went from whatever it was, 6 to 1. So there you put yourself into the eyes of the client or the perspective of the client. So like, how did that play out for you? Because that was an interesting thing.
Trying to remember what they were.
Well, I think it's even just the table had gaps. And as soon as I said, there's gaps here, if I was a client and there was gaps, I'd know not what to do with it. And then as soon as I said that to you, it changed your thinking of how you were completing the task. What went through your head with that?
I think it was just around like explaining things better. Like I know we had like for a couple of them, we couldn't explain the reach. And I just said like not applicable group conversation. But then from you saying like you didn't understand what that meant. So just like thinking if someone had no idea what happened in the session or how it would impact that part, like put it more clearly. So like anyone who picks it up could understand. And I think it was around like I was realizing that because a part of it was like not understanding what are actual problems when you don't fully understand the context of the people that you're speaking to. Like they might say something, but you're like, is that actually a problem? But I think that was why it was good to have like the generic considerations and knowing that like not everything had to be a problem and things could be put in there and reviewed by the client rather than us assuming that it's a problem. That's all I can think of for now. Some of it wasn't filled out because we ran out of time as well. So I feel like when I continued, it's probably close to what we would have done, but we just had more time to do it. But it was, like those little adjustments that you shared.
Which sounds like you did the same thing as me, which is like, where are we headed? Where are we currently? How do we get there? Kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you saying it needs to be useful for the client. I was like, that was like, because I think before it was this like data mode, like it was so overwhelming trying to get everything into like the right place and all of that. And then you could like look back on it with that sort of client mindset of like what they might need and make adjustments. Like maybe next time I could do that client thing from the beginning, but it was like I think you need to get your head out of the data sometimes. And I think that's what you spoke to me about as well. Like I was so caught up in like making sure the data was exactly right that I was putting in there and it was accurate, that like it was hard to like zoom out and see the bigger picture at the same time. So I guess that's something I can work on. Because data is like detail and then there's like the big picture of how does this impact like everything sort of thing. And Victoria and I were definitely in the detail for that task. And we needed to be for some parts, to be honest. Like we had to get the reach correct. We couldn't just make that up. Like we needed to make sure we understood what the data was. And then, I think as we continued and it got to the recommended and I finished filling those out, it was better to like zoom out and see what could this mean for like the whole project or next steps sort of thing.
That's interesting. So I remember you were partway through, I could tell you were in the detail too much. And remember I had said you need to go by your intuition, like you need to just get a sense check or a gut check. And then partway through, I sent you that post around the analysis versus
that was so good.
Intuition. And then you were like, I can't remember what you said, but it was like, I've seen this completely different. What happened? What did you see differently? You haven't explained that to me, but you approached it.
I had like a recommended action that worked for like a lot of the problems.
Right. Sorry, one sec, just to give context to people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just forgetting who's other people are listening. It's not just us.
Like, what the hell?
So the post was something around, is analysis better or should you trust your intuition? And it went into detail around that specifically and played out through a little example, I think, around how analysis plays out and how if you listen to your intuition. I think from memory, it was like you actually have to go with intuition first and then back it up with the data. So that's a very loose summary. Back to you, Hannah.
Yeah, so for me, it was like once I'd got the data in, which I started with the data, not the intuition. But when I went to the intuition, I thought of like a solution or like an action, recommended action that worked for like so many of the different problems. Like I could see all the problems at once and I was like, oh my God, this could work for like all of them. Like if I look at the big picture and what the actual issue is and what everyone's saying at a high, like bird's eye view of everything, why don't we just do this? And that was like, I don't think that would have happened if I went like problem by problem. Because it was like looking at all of them being like, oh, this is like the big picture of this is different to being like, this is a problem, this is a problem, this, and you're on like your 50th problem individually trying to think of things for each one.
Okay, interesting. And then, so go from there. So you completed the insights report, and from there I came in with fresh eyes, and I wasn't part of it. I've been separate to come in to be able to validate the data at the end. So I wasn't part of the conversations. I come in, look at your insights report, and then I did my summary of what's the recommended next steps, what's the scope to actually achieve success, which is the stuff that you typed up. So did that align with what you, I guess, the intuition or the big picture or the holistic side of everything that came out of that workshop? Did it reflect it back to you?
I don't think it was exactly what I thought, but there was definitely elements of it that would lead us to that.
Okay.
Like the sort of questions that you'd ask, like the bigger questions was what I'd thought of. And I also didn't fully understand your notes. So I don't think I have a like 100% view of what you were recommending, but there were like, it definitely aligned to what I thought happened in the session. Yeah. Like I was like, yeah, that is right.
You know how, okay, let's go back a step then. Because you weren't in that mindset to be able to make that conclusion or join the dot on that just there. But when you talk about like you could step back and see like this is the holistic type thing, what did you observe?
Like the exact thing I thought?
Yeah.
So the situation, there was like lots of different versions of the one type of document. And I was like, if documents are crossing over with one another and they're using like 10 different documents when they only need one, and they want it like digitally and like easily accessible, why would they not just like have a form that like branches out to the questions they actually need to answer for their task, rather than saying like, I need this document, I need that document? Like, do they even need to know what the documents are called? They just need to answer the questions that are relevant to their task. Like, I didn't quite know how they would like create that, but I was like, that would be the best case scenario.
That's the best solution. And that's the part 2 of the chunk of what I came back as like the summary recommendation. My stuff had the how to achieve that, but that's good because then it validates what we saw, what was put into the insights report at a whole level. This is how we solved the problem. I looked at your 40-page plus thing, all of the recommended actions, and also came to the same conclusion. And then that's what we're going back. So it's just, it's just interesting to validate that right now.
Yeah, cool. So your notes aligned with what I just said?
Yes, I did pick out one other thing, which was, so that's the main chunk of it. The first thing that needs to sit at the beginning is like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
What they are, why you use it, and the expectations, like it has to be used every time, or
that's important as well. Definitely.
So they're the two things that are needed. And then mine was, how do you get that happening basically as a project or an initiative? Like I extended it down to that level of detail.
Yeah, love that.
Interesting.
Very cool. Oh, it's been a week full of data.
And now we're just at the analysis phase.
Yeah, I know.
And all of this work has just gone into the analysis, and now we're scoping the instructional design, like how, which is really interesting, I think, for just people that are like, if you're still listening, like that level of detail to go to a user interview, to plan for that, to do like a document there's that big with that much data, and what does it turn out with? And it's like, we've literally just done the analysis, just like 10%, but yeah, the importance of that and the validation of that to design a solution.
Oh, 100%. I guess,
effective.
yeah, it's like a reminder to people that, like, even if you think you have the best idea on how to solve the problem, like, don't just jump into it straight away as soon as you start a project. Like, you need to speak to the people involved, and it could end up being something completely different. It's not until you understand them and what their day-to-day life looks like and all of that, that you can really come up with a solution that's going to work for them.
Yeah.
Because you're not building it for yourself, right? Like, you're building it for other people. If you're building something that you needed to work for you, then yeah, you could figure out what's best for you. But when you're dealing with people, it's so different for different audiences. Love that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to check out our human-centered design cohort in the description below, so you can join in on the human-centered design fun with our team and apply it to your own projects. And we'll see you for a future episode.
What's up, awesome human? Thank you on behalf of myself and the Belvista Studios team for continuously choosing to learn with us. We really appreciate it. If the tips and the insights and the context resonate with you and you want to take your skills to the next level, or you want to make your life way easier, you will love our Creator Hub. The Creator Hub is a place for people like you and us. Basically, it's the stuff that we use internally at Belvista Studios, and then we just share it publicly with you. The Creator Hub is created by instructional designers for instructional designers, and what you'll love there at the moment is we've got a quiz, could I be a better instructional designer, that has so much tips in the feedback if you're interested in human-centered design or just taking your skills to the next level in terms of the solutions you're creating, the problems you want to solve. But in there as well, aren't we cute? That's us. But we've got the coaching courses, freebies, give us gratitude, and also we've got some templates. And basically they're always around the lens of learning experience design, instructional design, and e-learning. So a human-centered design focus is very much what we're about at Belvista Studios. So putting your learners at the heart of a solution and creating something for their needs. So there's the human-centered design stuff, and then we've also got the business stuff. So this is the stuff they don't teach you about when you want to become a freelancer or a consultant in the instructional design world. So go check it out. The link is in the description. You can check out everything that is available for you. Thank you for choosing to learn with us. Continuously invest in your skills. You will be rewarded as an instructional designer. Share this stuff, share it with other people, because when we are better instructional designers, we create better solutions that create better humans, that create a better world. So we have a very important role, and I'm excited to be on this journey with you. Have an awesome day.